Awesome. So we're going to talk about a cool concept called partials. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is pull down our starter files, put our starter files into WAMP, make sure everybody has a working version of their files, and then we'll do partials. So if you can go to Blackboard, and sign in, obviously, and then navigate to your PHP class. Which one are you guys? Are you 3? I can never remember. Is it 3? Okay. It's the only problem with 3 classes, and they don't tell you which day it's on or anything like that, and they're not in order. You would think it's in order because you're like, well, we're Wednesday and we're number 3, so that makes sense. But Monday is 2, and Wednesday is 1, so I always get confused. All right, so go to weekly learning. Scroll to lesson 4, input validation and authentication. There is a quiz. It's due by the end of next week. I might have to extend that as well because it encompasses authentication, and based on Monday and Tuesday's class, you're likely not going to have all the information you need to complete it. So I might have to extend that as well. A link to the starter or to the project is here as well. So if you need a quick link there, it is under the project folder. So click on lesson 4 starter files, and they should download. And just a quick tip, I'm not sure if you know this about Windows, but when you download something, this little arrow becomes your best friend because you can click on it and choose to show in folder. So instead of having to go hunt for it, it immediately takes you to the directory where it is. Now just give me 1 second. I'm going to delete 2 of these files that I don't need. All right, so there's my lesson 4 starter files. I want to extract them. They're a zip file. I'm going to right click on them and choose extract all. And I'm just going to leave it in the directory that it wants to extract to. I'm not going to bother changing it. I mean, if you want to be super smart, you can always navigate to your www directory and extract them directly into the comp1006 folder. However, you're going to have to go through the steps of drilling down into the folder. See this lesson 4 folder here? That's where our stuff is. So we want to copy this folder. So I'm going to right click on this folder and choose copy. All right, so I'll walk through that one more time. Our starter files are downloaded to downloads. I right clicked on them and chose to extract them. Once they were extracted, they should pop up and show you this folder, but if they don't, you will have to drill into it, which means double click on it to go into it. And then this lesson 4 is what you're going to copy. Make sure you copy it. Okay. Now we're ready to actually navigate to our www folder. And obviously the quickest way to get there is our pinned link that we pinned on the side. However, I want to change something. What I've noticed in my other 2 classes is that the directories that people are putting files in is not the directory that the Apache server is loading. And so what happens is they're making changes, and the changes aren't appearing in the browser. And so the first thing they say is, hello, your code doesn't work. But it's not me in the scenario. It is not me at all. It's that you're editing files that are not being served to the browser. You're editing in the wrong folder. So let's make sure right off the bat that we get these in the correct folder. And the easiest way to do that, WAMP actually gives us a quick link to the folder that's being delivered to Apache, which makes things very handy. If you click on your W, so make sure you open WAMP. So to open WAMP, even though that should be something you're used to already, to open WAMP, just click down in Cortana, type in WAMP, and open the server. Unless you're using XAMPP. If you're using XAMPP, then obviously load XAMPP. Once WAMP has loaded, you can click on the W, and you'll see that there's some options here. And one of the options, which is going to be very difficult for you poor cats over there to see, is www directory. So when you click on the www directory is an option there. I'd almost recommend that if you're on this side of the room, it might be beneficial. Well, I guess you can kind of see it if you have good eyes. If you don't have very good eyes, then I would move to that side of the room in one of the other tables. That way it's easier for you. Anyways, click on this www directory, and it will pop up and explore in the exact directory that is being loaded by Apache. So I will say that one more time. This directory that we just opened is the directory loaded by Apache, which means this is where we want our files to go. If you did this and you don't see a comp1006 directory, you need to create one, okay? If you see one, what I would like you to do is double-click into it, then right-click and paste your lesson 4 folder so that it gets pasted in here. Just ignore the fact that I have so many. It's because I have one for every class that I teach, right? I'm going to rename mine. You can leave yours as lesson 4, but I'm going to rename mine to Wednesday. While I'm at it, I'm also going to rename this other one that I didn't even notice wasn't named. There we go. All right, so I have my lesson 4 directory pasted in here. Let's just verify that we copy and pasted the correct thing. I should be able to double click into this folder one time and see this list of files. If I don't see that list of files and instead I see a lesson 4 folder in there, then that means I didn't copy the correct folder. And what you need to do is copy that folder, move up a directory, and paste so that just that folder's in there. Otherwise, you'll be too many levels deep. Okay? Did anybody have any difficulty following that or missed any steps? Super important. No? Okay. I trust you. Let's see where we can go from here. All right. In our in our lesson plan, let's go ahead and open up the lesson plan, which is the top link. Okay? If you lose track of me and you're having trouble following along and you've missed some steps, this lesson plan is your best friend because the code that we're going to discuss today is in the lesson plan, and you can always copy it and paste it. In addition to that, we're going to use Slack, so make sure you've opened Slack, and I will post any complex code to the Slack channel as well. Okay, so 2 places that you can access if you miss a step. All right. Cool. Our next step is to actually take our code and open it up inside our editor. Now, many of you are using different editors than me, which is totally fine. Atom seems to be really good because Atom and Sublime are most closely related to Visual Studio, which is what I'm using. What I have noticed, though, is Brackets is missing a lot of little like cool shortcuts in your code editor, so you'll wind up doing a little bit more work if you want to use Brackets. Not that it's a big deal. You're welcome to use Brackets. The one I would definitely suggest not using is Visual Studio. Not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio. The one that's pink, it shows up pink inside your thing, because that is like taking 6 gigs and saying, here, cool, edit a text file. No reason for that. It's just too much, too big, right? You don't need anything so heavy. Just one of the basic ones. Even Notepad++, I have a buddy who swears by Notepad++. He loves it. Comes with syntax highlighting, kind of nice. Super lean application. Notepad++ is a good one as well. All right, I'm going to open up my Visual Studio. And I'm going to go to File. Now, you'll notice when you open up Visual Studio, the last thing you were working on will open up inside of it, okay? But we're going to go to File, Open Folder. And this is the same as any editor that you're working in. File, Open Folder. You're going to go to your C drive, right? WAMP64, www. Now, here's the problem, though. If your WAMP is not loading from this directory, we want to make sure we load in the directory that we're loading from. So the easiest way to do that, once again, not to repeat myself, but click on the W, go to the www directory, click up here, copy the URL or path, and then paste it in and hit enter, and it will take you there right off the bat. So that way you're guaranteed that the folder you're about to load in is the one that's being served by Apache. So I'm going to go into here, going to grab my lesson 4 folder, and I'm going to say select folder. And it's going to tell me the path does not exist for some bizarre reason. Let me try that again. Maybe I just didn't do what it wanted to do. There we go. So double click so you're in it, I guess. Cool. If you did this correctly, you should see a comp1006.sql file in your IDE. Does anybody not see that file in their IDE? The comp1006 SQL file. Okay, that's good. That's awesome. This file is our new version of our users table. It's a completely slimmed down, streamlined version of our users table. Our users table originally had address information, phone information, just tons of stuff, right? That wasn't absolutely necessary for what we're doing. So I stripped all of that out. I added in 2 new fields and removed 5 fields. I added in the role field that you will see here, where we're going to actually store our user's role, and I added in a password field. In addition, my role field is known as an enum. What an enum is it's a list of possible values that this field is allowed to be. So you can say admin in general, but if somebody tried to put in a new value of like common, it would blow up and say, no, that's not one of the values that's available in that list. So that's called an enum. I'm going to leave that for your SQL teachers to walk you through, but we've created one. The next one is this default value. Default just basically means if the person doesn't enter a value, then use this value. This is called a hash. That whole thing from here to here is like 250 characters, and it means it basically works out to be test, because that's the default password. But when it hashes it, it makes that big hash. But that's literally just the word test. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating 10 users. They all have the same default password, test, so that we can use them to log in, log out, that kind of thing. Cool. So what's our next step? Our next step is to take this and import it into our application. So what I would like you to do is go down to your browser and open up your browser. And we're going to open a new tab. And we're going to go to localhost/phpmyadmin. So PHP my admin. Do I have chalk? Ooh, I've got purple chalk and yellow chalk. I've got colored chalk. So it's localhost/phpmyadmin. All one word. Okay? So like that. Localhost phpmyadmin. And if you go there and you get there correctly, the screen will look like that. So you might remember this from last week, I think it was, or the week before. We went here and we actually created our new users table. So we're going to actually replace our users table. So what I did in our SQL code is I made it so that it will actually drop the users table and then create a new one. Okay? So the default username is root. Yours should be root unless for some reason you have a different one, but it should be root. And then you're going to click go. Okay? Did anybody have difficulty getting to phpMyAdmin? No? All right. Our next step is to import our SQL that we have in our lesson 4 folder. We have to do this in 2 steps. First, we need to select the database we actually want to write to. So on the left-hand side, you should have a database called comp_1006. Does anybody not have that database? So it should say comp_1006. You don't have it? Okay, so we're going to need to create it. So if you don't have it, what I would like you to do is click New. Under database name, you're going to type in comp_1006. And then you're going to change where it says Latin Swedish. We're going to change that to UTF-8. And if you type UTF-8 really fast, it will like jump. And then we want General CI towards the bottom of the list. The only people doing this are the ones that don't have a database called comp1006. Okay? Once you have that in, you're going to click Create. And once you click Create, you're going to come here. Only you're not going to have any tables. Okay? Which is fine. Don't worry about creating a table. Was anybody else missing their comp1006 database? Nope. Cool. What I would like you to do now is up at the top here, you will see Import. Make sure you've clicked comp1006. That's a super important step. So you've clicked comp1006. You can see Import. Click on Import. Go to Choose File. Okay, so Import, then Choose File. And we need to navigate to where our files are that we downloaded from Blackboard, right? They're in that WAMP folder. So I have a quick link. If I click my quick link, it takes me to the WAMP folder, right? If you don't, then you're going to go see WAMP64, www, comp1006, and lesson 4, right? If that's where yours is. If it's not, you're going to go to wherever the www directory said it was when you clicked on it under WAMP, okay? This comp_1006 SQL file is what we want. Yours might not say .SQL because you might have extensions turned off. If it doesn't, then it will at least say comp_1006, which is totally fine. It's the same file, okay? Once you click on it, go ahead and hit Open. And it's going to load it, and if it loaded it correctly, you should see it written right here. Oh, sorry. You should, oh, that's annoying. Try that again. You should see it written right here, next to it. Did anybody have difficulty finding the file? You can't find it? Okay. Oh, so root. And then click on your comp1006 directory. Cool. Go to Import right there. Go to Choose File. Navigate to wherever that www directory is. Yep. Cool. Under comp1006 likely. Lessons 4. And it's that thing, the comp1006 thing. No worries. All right, cool. Now, once you've done that, you're going to scroll to the bottom and you're going to click Go. And if everything is good, you should get a bunch of green blocks. If you don't get green blocks, I will tell you exactly what likely the problem is. The likely problem is your database is not called comp_1006, but rather comp-1006, or comp1006 is one word, or something like that. Is it called comp_1006? You're 100% sure before I walk over there that it's called comp_1006? Okay. I believe you. Drop table if it exists, that's because you missed the step where we click this. And then we can do our import. We have to be in the actual database. You have to select it, right? Because you're basically, otherwise it's like, cool, what database do you want me to execute this on? I have no idea. So, yeah, go ahead, navigate, click go. He's got green. Hey, all righty. So now we have our new users table, and if you want to look at it, all you have to do is just click on users, and you will see we have 10 users there, as opposed to 93 that we had last week. Much simpler to look at, much simpler to deal with. Enough users that we can do editing, deleting, all that type of stuff, that we don't need to create new ones. Cool. Now that that's all done, I'm going to close out of phpMyAdmin because I don't need it open anymore. I'm going to close my, what the heck's that thing called? I forget. I'm going to close Blackboard. That's it. And I'm going to go into my lesson plan, except for I'm going to change my lesson plan up a little bit so it looks slightly different than yours, just because it's easier for me to work when I can collapse and all that fancy stuff. Cool. By the way, not to like show off or brag anything, but I built this. This is my thing that I built to build my lesson plans because it makes my life easier. And inside of it, it has a very handy little editor, right, where I can actually add things. I can add code blocks in and stuff like that. And it's funny because I was talking to a student that I had before, and they said to me, out of all the instructors we have, you're the only one who actually uses code to teach code. And I was like, really? That seems baffling to me. Like I keep saying, I'm a super lazy person. So I want to find the fastest way to do something, right? I don't want to waste a ton of time. This is the fastest way to do something because I can put code right in there, allows you guys to copy and paste it. We're not held up by other things, right? So it makes a lot of sense. That being said, I say I'm a super lazy person, but most of these lesson plans are 12,000, 14,000 words that I've typed out myself. So maybe I'm not as lazy as I'd like to think I am. All right, we're going to talk about partials. And it sounds like a super scary word, but it really isn't. How many of you know what a function is? Cool. There should be a lot more hands up than that. That is alarming, actually. Every hand should be up. You should all know what a function is. How many of you know what a class is? You guys are working in class objects, right? This semester, you're learning object-oriented programming with Java. So you should all know what classes are, right? Because you've built them. And you guys are making methods, right? You're not calling them data members. You're calling them methods, okay? Making methods and likely properties. Are you calling them properties or are you calling them fields? Fields? Yeah, it depends on the teacher because I think there's two Java teachers and one calls them fields, one calls them properties. So the whole purpose of a function, the whole purpose of a method or a class is to encapsulate. That's a kind of an interesting word. Encapsulate a bunch of code that you are likely going to type over and over and over again, right? So think about this for a second. If I want to write hello world 19 times in my project, and then somebody comes along and says, Sean, hate to tell you this, but you spelt world wrong. Now I've got to go find the 19 places that I typed hello world and go correct that. What's the obvious answer to fix all of that situation? You write a function, right? One function called hello world. And then if I need to modify that message at any point, I just go fix the function, right? Makes perfect sense. It's likely the first problem a programmer will encounter and try to solve. Because the programmer will be typing out and be like, I've typed this thing 19 times, there's got to be a better way. And that's when you discover functions and your life completely changes because functions make your life so much easier, right? Classes is like the bigger version of that. Classes are like, we're now encapsulating an entire idea, right? I have a person, and my person can have all these different details about that person, and they need the same actions as another person. So classes allow you to now take code, actions, features, properties, and be able to carry them across multiple people, right? So it's a bigger version of that. Partials are like a very simple version of code reuse. What a partial is it's a view, okay? So you know how you write out your HTML, and you're taking that piece of HTML, and you're putting it in like 6 files. When you guys took your HTML class, and you wrote your HTML page, you probably noticed after you hit page 5 that all 5 pages, the part from the doc type to the body tag was exactly the same on all 5 pages. It didn't change, right? And you're probably like, why do I have to type this out all 5 times if it's always the same? It's never changing. What's the reason for this, right? Well, the reason is the browser is stupid, and the browser doesn't understand that you're annoyed that you had to type this out 5 times. The browser's just like, sorry, you got to type it out 5 times. But PHP comes in and says, no, you don't have to do that. We have this very powerful function called include. And what include will do for you, include will allow you to take a file, copy its contents, and paste it wherever you call it, which makes it super, super handy. And that is literally what it does. It doesn't parse the contents in the file. It doesn't review them. It doesn't look at them. It doesn't evaluate them in any way. It's not going to execute the PHP in the file that you have there. It's going to ignore all of it. It's literally going to copy from line 1 to the end of line character at the bottom of the file and paste it. That's all it's going to do. The good news is, though, is that we have actually a couple of functions there. We have include and we have include once. Include will just copy and paste everywhere you decide to call it. So if you want to include your header, for example, it will literally paste header in every place you write include header, every single place. Sometimes, actually more than not, that's not something you want to happen. Maybe you have a function that you want to execute only once, and you don't want it to execute in multiple places, which means when you include it, you need it to run that one time. But because you have all these wonderfully nested includes all through your thing, you forgot that you had already included it, and it accidentally gets included a second time, and now they're competing. Hence, include once. Include once basically says, if this content already exists, do not include it again. There's no reason to. So it's kind of it's not necessarily use one or the other. It's use the right one for the right job, right? Most times you're going to use include once. 90% of the time you'll use include once. There are times where you will use include where you need duplicates of information, right? That's when you would use include. All right. There's a big issue with partials that is kind of annoying. If I have a file, so let's say I have a file called header, right? So in my header, I have the top part. I have the top part of my HTML inside my header file, right? And then I have another file called index, and that's going to be my main home page, right? That's where my home page goes. So I've got index and I've got header. And I want to include header and index. Header lives in a folder called partials. Cool. And I want to include it in here, so I say include, that's not the real syntax, but include /partials /header. Okay, so now I'm including my header. This dot, what it means is from the directory I am currently in, find the folder partials, and then find the file header and include it. Okay. Header contains its own include called connect. And connect exists in includes connect. Okay. So in order to include this, because we're in partials, we want to move up a couple of directories. So what I do, where's the chalk? All the way the heck down here. So what I do, I move up a directory, /, and that will actually move me out into the root, go into includes, and grab content. Fine. Here's where the problem occurs. Header is included in our index file. And any of these paths that we define start from where we are. They don't start from this directory where header is. It starts from the directory that we're loading. So the current one that's loaded in the browser. So you can kind of see where the problem's going to happen. This one will work, no problem. The header file will load because we're starting where index is. Index is in the root, which is fine. We move into our partials file and we grab our header. Okie dokie. This one is going to blow up and not be found. And the reason is because this executes from here. And here's where our problem is. We're already at the root. Now we're moving up a directory. So now we're out of our application entirely. We're looking for this includes folder that just doesn't exist whatsoever. And now we're trying to access connect. That's a big problem. That's a common problem that exists in web applications. So what people will do, and I kid you not, this is the worst thing in the world, they will just sit there and fight with these little double dots and single dots until they get it working. That's what most people will do. The better way to deal with it is to centralize your root paths. And what that means, it means instead of giving these double dots or these single dots, you give it the absolute path from the beginning of your application to where that file should start. So the whole path. That's known as an absolute path. These are known as relative paths. Relative paths are bad. Absolute paths are good because you can predict what's going to happen. So how do we create these absolute paths? What we do is we create two constants. Have you guys worked with constants before? So what a constant is it's a variable that the value never changes, hence the word constant, right? We create two constants. We create one constant that will be the root path of our directory structure. Okay, so it'll be C:/, for example, WAMP64, www, comp1006, lesson 4. That'll be our root path. Notice it starts with a C, okay? So it's the drive that we're in. The second one will be an HTML path because you can't give a directory path to an anchor link. It doesn't understand what it is. It doesn't know what to do with it. So we have to give an HTML path. That one will start at comp1006, lesson 4. We're going to create these two things. You're going to include this file in every single lesson we do. You'll probably forget about it entirely until you get out to the workforce, and then you hit that problem the first time, and then you'll remember it. But super important. So we're going to do that now. So open up your IDEs. Make sure you have your project folder open. And you're going to go to config.php. And I'll zoom in a little just for people who are a little further away. And you'll see we have two steps. We're going to define the directory path, and we're going to define the HTML path. In order to define a constant, whether, and this isn't relative to just directory paths or the base path, this is relevant to just defining a constant. Constants in PHP are a little weird. In some languages, usually you just define constants by writing whatever the name of the constant is and then making it equal to a value. That's usually the way it's done, right? However, in PHP, they actually require you to call a function to do it. So the function is called define. The first argument takes is the name of the symbol you're creating. So you're creating a constant. It wants the name of that constant, and you pass it as a string. So double quotes or single quotes, doesn't matter. We're going to call this root. Common convention is to use all capital letters for constants. It's common convention. We're not going to do that for our base path, though. The second argument that define wants is the value. When you create a constant, you can't leave it empty. you have to assign a value to it immediately at the time of instantiation. It's required. So we're going to do comma. And the value we're going to give it is the directory that the config file is currently sitting in, because that will be the entire root path. Our config file is in the root of our application if you consider our application starts at lesson 4, okay? This is the root of our application. So I want literally from C:/ to lesson 4 Wednesday as a path, and I want to store that. So what I will do is I will say dir name, which says give me the directory name of underscore, that's 2 underscores, not 1, 2 underscores, file, underscore, and then finish it. So that is, I'll write it in 2 spots here, that is underscore, FILE in all capital letters, underscore. Over here, same thing, underscore, FILE, underscore. Okay? What that is it's called a magic constant, and it's defined by PHP when PHP boots. So there's a whole bunch of them. There's file, there's directory, there's, my brain's drawing a blank, there's server, there's response, there's a whole bunch of them, magic constants. You can look them up. Actually, I think I have a link to it already for you. But basically, they give you information about your current environment is the idea. So this is going to return back, file will return back C:/ WAMP64 www/com1006 /lesson04 /_config.php. That's what that returns back. I don't want the file name because we don't need it. I just want the directory. So dir name will literally take that path, truncate off anything off the end of it, and just return back that directory. I find the easiest way to see this is to actually echo it out so that you can actually see what's happening. So we're going to echo out underscore file underscore, right? And while we're at it, we'll append a BR tag. So concatenation, that's a dot. Why are you freaking out? What? That's not a thing. That's weird. And then what's that? You don't need it, actually. We can put it in just because it does confuse some students. We can put it in. But if your whole file is just PHP, it explicitly closes or implicitly closes. So you don't need it, but yeah, I think we'll include it just so people aren't confused. And then the next echo statement, we're going to echo out what dir name underscore file does so that you can see the differences between the two. I think this might actually be caused by this. What the heck? That is correct. I don't know what that semicolon is talking about. All right. We're going to echo what file returns, which is the argument we're giving to dir name, and then we're going to echo what dir name returns so that you can see what both of them are and you can see the difference. So go to your browser, go to the website for localhost. Okay, so there's the root, and I'm going to navigate to underscore config.php. So it's comp-1006 lesson 4 / underscore config.php. And what it will return is underscore file returns literally the file name as well as the path that the file is located in. So mine's located in C:/WAMP64. Some of yours might not be, but either way, it should give you the full path to where it's located. Dir name underscore underscore file underscore underscore will return back the directory only. It truncates the config part because it doesn't need the file, right? So this one is underscore underscore file. This one is dir name underscore underscore file. Is that clear? Does everybody kind of understand that? Okay, because it gets way worse. All right. For the next part, we're going to do this in 2 chunks because I did write it as 1 chunk before and it was super confusing. So we're going to write it as 2 chunks. First, we're going to define a new variable that we're going to call intersect. Any Chuck fans? No? Okay. Used to be a show called Chuck, and he had this thing in his head that would give him like computer abilities, and it was called the intersect. Anyways, that's not what we're using for. We're using it because we're literally going to create an intersection between 2 strings and get a result back, just the leftover back. We're going to use a function that's built into PHP called string replace. And string replace takes 3 arguments. The idea here is that it's a needle haystack kind of idea. I have a string. I want to find a chunk of it based on a pattern, and then I want to replace that chunk with something else. That's what string replace does. You give it the thing you're looking for, you tell it what you want it to replace it with, and then you tell it where you want to replace it, the thing that it's going to replace it in. So we need 3 pieces here. Our first piece that we need to give it is the directory that we want to replace with. And we're going to be a little cheeky here. We are in, if you look at it right now, we are located here. Okay? That's where we are. That's the directory we are currently in. The piece that I want to strip out is here. So we got to be a little cheeky. So we know that dir name will return back the directory of where we currently are. There's another magic constant that we can use called underscore underscore dir underscore underscore. I'll write it over here as well. That is underscore underscore dir underscore underscore. What that will return is the current directory that you're in. If I wrap that with dir name, it'll actually kick you up a directory. And if I was to wrap that with dir name, it would kick us up another directory. And every time you do that, it just keeps kicking you up a directory, right? So that's what I mean. We're going to be a little cheeky because what we're going to do, we're going to pass this dir name, the function call, and then the argument we're going to give it is dir, which is underscore underscore dir, like I have it written on the board. So that's argument 1 to our string replace. Argument 2 is the thing we want to replace with, and what we want to replace it with, if you look at your local host, this directory name is what we want to replace it with. The directory name that I just highlighted up here. Mine is comp-1006. Yours is likely the same unless you changed it for some reason. So we should be able to just replace it with the same word, comp-1006. However, we can't just do that because what will happen, dir name dir will actually return back a slash, the name of the directory, and that's it as a string. We need to slash the end of that. If we don't slash the end of that, it just becomes one run-on sentence, right? So we need to make sure we add the slash at the end of that. So we're going to put it right here, right before comp1006. So that's the thing we're going to replace it with. We're going to find this and replace it with this. Now we need to tell it in what thing we're replacing from, right? We need to give it the string to look in and actually create the replacement. Comma, root. Because we already have our base path with root. So now that we have our intersection, probably not a bad idea to actually spit out what we're looking at. So why don't we spit out dir? We'll also spit out dir name underscore underscore dir. And then lastly, we'll spit out the actual intersect. So you can see what it produced. Now, I've already done this for you in the lesson plan as well. If you were to scroll down past this file, or maybe it's above the file. Where did I put it? I have lost it. It's in there somewhere. Maybe I didn't say that. I thought I did. Oh, I know why. I need to refresh. I added it in just about 10 minutes ago. Oh, see my syntax error? I have a colon. That needs to be a semicolon. All right. So now that I have this file, I'm just echoing these out. If you don't have it fully typed out, don't worry about it. We're going to comment them out anyways. I'm going to come here. I'm going to hit refresh. This first part right here, we need to add a break tag. We've got a run-on sentence here. We'll add a break tag up here so that it actually breaks properly. That'll help us avoid that run-on sentence. I can see it a little easier. So the first piece we're going to look at is the result of this magic constant, the underscore underscore dir. The next piece is what it's going to look like when we pass it to the dir name function. And then the last piece is the intersect that we created. So the value of dir underscore underscore dir is just that directory name. The value when we pass it to dir name, notice what it's done. It's moved up a directory and returned back the result. The value of our intersect from our string replace is com1006/lesson4 Wednesday. Cool. Now we have our directory path, our directory root path, which is this. And we have our base path for when we do links, which is this. Like I said, you'll likely totally forget about it until you hit that with your own jobs out in the industry. All right, I'm going to comment out all the echo tags. Goodbye, good night, good night. Our last step, the last absolute step is to create one more constant called basepass. So we're going to define a new constant called basepass, and we're going to give it the value of intersect. And we're going to save. It's so weird. The intellisense in this thing is completely broken. It says this is an error, but it's not. So funny. Once you've actually called this, what I would like you to do is make sure you're on that page in your browser. When you hit refresh, everything should go away. There should be no errors. It should be just a blank white page. We'll do the navigation real fast, and then we'll take a break for 15 minutes, and I'll help anybody who has a problem, okay? All right. Is anybody still typing this out, or are you good? Good? All right. Are you still typing it out? Okay. Can you see from way back there? Zoom in a little bit, but it's going to cause some word wrapping. There you go. Once again, just to quickly explain why we're doing this centralizes our paths. This means that whenever we include a file or create a URL, this starts us from the root of our project. We always have an absolute path. We don't have to worry about monkeying our way through the directories and make sure we know where we're going, which becomes such a headache. This makes life a lot simpler. It should also save us a lot of helping and troubleshooting with computers because we won't have to fight directory structures. Okay? Yeah. So the last one, what it does basically, its whole purpose is to get rid of that C:/blah. We're just come back to the original path, basically. Yeah. So it's going to start. This actually returns comp-1006/lesson4. That's what it's going to return. When we create lesson 5, it'll return comp-1006/lesson5 without us touching the file. It will just automatically return that. All right. Let's open up our main nav, and I'm going to show you 2 ways you can navigate to the main nav file. You can click this thing over here, go to partials, click the arrow beside partials, and click on main nav, but that's the very super slow way to do it. I like the fast way. The fast way is you hit Control P on your keyboard, and you type in main, and it comes up with the files that match it, and then you hit enter, and it opens. So that's Control P, type the name of the file in, only a piece of it, and it will show up in the list, and then just hit enter once you find it. That's called quick search. Super, super handy. This is our navigation. I like our navigation. Our navigation actually looks quite nice. I'll show you kind of a demonstration of it. This is what it looks like when it's collapsed. This is all being done by Bootstrap, right? And when it's not collapsed, it looks like this, where it's nice and laid out and it's pretty, right? That's this navigation right here. Right now, all the links in the navigation are broken, like entirely broken. They're not going to work. And the reason is because they're all relative URLs. We need them to be absolute paths, which is why we created that file in the first place. So the first step we're going to do is actually include the file. That's our first step. Once we include the file, then everything else becomes a little easier. So at the top of your file, you're going to type PHP, right? Your opening and closing tags. And we don't want the navigation to include any more than how many times? Just one, right? You don't need it 6 times on the page. So we're going to do include once. And then we're going to give it our path. So we want to include the config file. So we're going to do dir name __ dir __ dot. Super important you put a dot, not a comma, / _config.php. So this is us loading in our config file that contains our base path and our other paths, our directory root path. Once we have that, we'll now be able to move through our navigation and fix our URLs. And incidentally, we have about 9 of them. And like I said before, I'm super lazy and I don't like typing things many, many times. So this isn't a scenario where I can actually, not cleanly and not easily for you to understand, rebuild this with PHP to make it just kind of iterate. So I'm going to take advantage of multi-cursor in my browser, in my IDE. Multi-cursor basically, it does exactly that. It allows you to create multiple cursors. And then you can type, and as you type, everywhere there's a cursor, the text will come out. So if I have the same piece of text that I need to type, I just create multiple cursors, type it out, call it a day. So we'll do it in chunks so that it's not crazy. The first thing I want you to do is change SM to whatever your initials are. Okay, so mine's actually SCM. You change it to whatever your initials are. Once you've done that, you see this href here, right? We're going to put our cursor in front of that href, or href, however you want to call it. I call it href. And we're going to actually spit out an inline chunk of PHP. So we're going to go question mark with an equal sign, right? Not that thing, this thing. And the variable name I'm going to use here is basepass, because that's our root URL starter. So that's on line 5. All right. So that will be the base path that we defined in our configuration file. That constant we created, that's what's going to wind up spitting out the path in there. So what I want you to do is scroll down a little bit. Hopefully I'm not ahead of anybody here. And we're going to about line 13. You'll see another href there. But if you scroll a little further, you'll see an href for this one, an href for about, and an href for contact. So we'll just do all three at the exact same time. The way we do that, first put a cursor next to the slash, so that it's blinking on the left side of it. Hold down your Alt key on your keyboard and click one next to about. While still holding your Alt key, come down to where it says contact and click another cursor just before contact. So you should wind up with 3 blinking cursors. If you make a mistake, just click off and do it again. Click, hold Alt, click, and click. Now, this works in VS Code. It's not guaranteed to work in your IDE. What are you using for an IDE? Atom? I think Atom is Control. What is it? It's Control Alt. So it's Control Alt. Yeah. What's that? Just by itself, just Control? Okay. So once you have your blinking cursors, you're going to type in the same thing we typed in the last time. Base path. It gets even better. It gets so much better. We have base path, right? And like I said, I'm super lazy, and even just typing that out once kind of annoys me when I can just copy and paste it, right? Well, multi-cursor actually supports multi-paste as well. Everywhere you put a cursor, if you hit paste, whatever you copied will be pasted in the same spot, and every single one of those cursors. But it gets even cooler than that. If you have 3 cursors and you copy 3 different things, and then you go put 3 cursors somewhere else, you can paste all 3 different things. Not all at once, literally in those 3 different spots. So cool. We're going to be just simple. Take any one of the 3, highlight it, and copy it with Control-C. If you want to right-click and copy, you can, but I would recommend getting into the habit of hitting Control-C. Any Mac users in here? Okay, cool. I won't waste time giving instructions how to do it with Mac. Scroll down, and you're going to see this href on line 22. Put your cursor there. Don't hold Alt, just put a cursor there, okay? No Alt, just a cursor. Now, move down further, not this hashtag, ignore that. Hashtags are for Kardashians only. Just move down a little further, leave that cursor blinking. Come down to line 29, hold down Alt, and put another cursor there. And then you'll notice right on line 30, just underneath it, there's another one. Go ahead and put a cursor there. So now we have 3 cursors blinking. I have one up here and 2 down here. We're not done yet. We're going to scroll even further. Yeah. Is it control by default? That's what she found as well. Yeah, control by default in Atom unless you change the keyboard configuration. Scroll down a little further. Don't paste yet. We'll paste all at once. Right here on line 37, hold Alt or Control if you're in Atom. Line 42, same thing. And line 48, same thing. So that's line 37, line 42, line 48. Now that you've got all these blinking cursors, you can see I have so many of these blinking cursors, right? Now hit Control V, and it will literally paste basepass everywhere you put a cursor. Makes it super fast. Yeah, it is cool. Go ahead and save that. Get them all? Nice. It's like Pokemon. You got to find them and get every single one of them. All right. Let's go see if this file's working, because this is what we'll be troubleshooting at the break. I'm also going to do you a favor. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go into Slack, make sure I'm comp 1006. There's a big message there if you want to read it that I wrote this morning. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to title it what the name of the file is, which is main-nav.php, and I'll create a snippet. So if you're super, super lazy, or maybe you're just concerned, you can go ahead and copy the code from there. All right. Let's go look at it. Let's open our browser, and we'll go to the file directly. So it's under partials, and if you just hit enter, it should just list them all. So I'm just going to partials up here, and then you'll see underscore main-nav.php. And click on it, and it will open up. If you have a bunch of orange errors, I will help with those at the break. If you don't, the other thing you want to make sure is working is the actual links themselves. If you hover over a link, it should say localhost, conf-1006, lesson-4, about.php if you're hovering over the about link. Even better than that, if you click the about link, it should go to the about page. And it shouldn't wind up saying undefined or page not found or anything like that. If you're getting page not found, you will need support, okay? All right, so it's 8:11. We're going to break till 8:30 because it usually takes about that long. I'm going to set up here. If you have an issue, bring your computer up and I will help you. Anybody else who doesn't have an issue, feel free to go grab food or a drink or something, and we'll resume in 20 minutes. So the good news is that everybody has working headers and stuff, which is awesome. You'll notice we can actually navigate around the site a little bit. You can go to Contact Me, you can go to About Me, and you can go to My House, right? Now, something I want to share with you, the idea is that because you guys are heading into co-op next semester, I want you to be able to take this and actually display that as a portfolio piece. Like, turn it into an actual portfolio website so that you can give it to your potential employer and include it in your actual resume. And that will likely fill our last class, because our last class, I'll show you guys how to take this and deploy it to a completely free online location where you can host it for free, You don't have to pay anything. It's just free. So we're going to host it on this free source, and it's called Heroku. And the best part about Heroku and learning how to use Heroku is it's an industry standard tool, so you'll get the experience of utilizing it as well. And I'll even show you, well, we'll talk about it. I'll print up a little write-up on how to actually change the domain name that they give you to your own domain name. Obviously, that part won't be free. You would have to go find and buy a domain name, but I'll write up a little lecture so that you know how to do it, right? So that you can actually attach it, and then you can have, amrit.com or in my case, seanmckinnon.ca, right? Or whatever it is that you want to have. All right. So all of our links are working. If you want to work on these pages, the My House, About Me, and the Contact Me pages, they're all sitting in the root of this project. So you'll see About, Contact, and Index. Open up index.php, just the bottom one, and let's just quickly discuss this page a little bit. So you'll recognize right off the top, there's our config that we're including everywhere that will allow us to have this nice base pass, right? So that's up at the top. You'll also notice we have a variable called title. This variable is actually what's going to show up inside the tab in your browser. So if you look at your browser and you're on the index page, you'll notice up here in the tab, it says that title. It's the exact same title. There's an important takeaway from that. I'm not sure if you guys know what I do for a living, but I build tools for search engine optimization for marketers. That's my job, right? And so I know a thing or two about SEO, just a little bit. And I know what needs to show that Google will actually pay attention to. So if you notice, at the very top on my tab, it says Sean McKinnon's portfolio up here, right? If I do a search for me, I mean, who doesn't search for themselves, right? If I do a search for me, you'll notice that the link to my website on Google is also Sean McKinnon's portfolio. That's not coincidental. When Google goes to your site and indexes your site, they index that meta title that you created, which is this title here. That's what they'll index. They'll index the title that shows up in your head. The description that they build underneath, so contact Sean McKinnon, Sean McKinnon's happy professional face. I don't know why I wrote that. Sean McKinnon is a full stack developer. They're picking that up from content throughout the site, and they build this description. You can actually add a description, though. You just add a meta description, and then that would populate that space instead of all that other information. Why is that important? Because if somebody was to type in Aurelia, where I live, full stack developer, all these different full stack developers will show up, but what you're hoping for is that your name will show up somewhere. My name doesn't show up because my website needs work, but the idea is to eventually get it to a point where your site actually shows up on Google, right? And it's worse than Barry because you'll be competing so much more, but you can make your website better in order to compete, right? So that's kind of the takeaway from that. I didn't realize my favicon was my face. That's cool. I forgot I did that. All right. So that title, obviously, you don't want the title to say Sean McKinnon's portfolio because you're not Sean McKinnon. I'm Sean McKinnon, unless your name is Sean McKinnon. I don't know. You want to change that. So let's change that to whatever. Just go ahead and highlight the stuff in the string. What I would recommend changing, just this part that I've highlighted. Google will actually index 65 characters of your title. So it will read off 65 characters. So whatever is the most important to you needs to be said in those 65 characters. So very likely, the most important thing that should be in those 65 characters is your first and last name, right? Anything after that should basically describe what you do for a living, right? So that's why mine says Sean McKinnon's portfolio, full stack developer, because I'm a full stack developer. You guys might be like, well, what are we? You're full stack developers, You're not front-end developers. You're not building pretty websites. You're building the utilities in the back end that do the heavy lifting. Your income starts at about $60,000 a year at a junior position and caps out about $250,000 plus, right? That's your income goals. A front-end developer caps out at $120,000 and usually starts at $40K, and it takes a while to get there. You want to be a full-stack developer, or you want to be an application developer. Those are the things that pay money, okay? So I would write in yours, whatever your name is, either software engineer or full-stack developer, one of those two terms. Just out of curiosity, how many of you actually want to build websites when you get out of school? A few of you? How many of you want to build desktop applications? A couple of you? Those who are doing websites, write full stack developer. Those who are doing desktop applications, write software engineer. That'll help make it easier that when people are scanning for you and looking for you specifically, you'll fall into the right buckets, right? This active piece here, I've done this for you. It just says home. Just leave that. Don't touch that. That needs to say home. That's a little flag that I've created. All right, the next piece. You'll notice this is our header, right? So we're including the root, and that's that variable we created, right? We're going to partials, and we're including our header. Our header contains all the pieces of information that we need on our page. If you open up the header file under partials and scroll towards the bottom, you'll see that it is also including something. It's including our main nav. So this is what I was talking about before, nested inclusions, right? So index is including header, and header is including main nav. But because we have this wonderful base path, we don't have to worry about things getting muddled and lost, right? That helps us out. All right, so I do have a file that I wanted to start in. And I think it was actually header where I wanted to start. Let me just double check. No, that's fairly complex. It's not header that I want. We did main nav. Oh, I know where I wanted to start. I wanted to start under users. So users, index.php. So not this index.php, not the root of the application index, but the one that's under the users file here. Go ahead and open that. That's where we'll start. So the naming of my files is not accidental. I try to follow industry patterns so things become easier for you when you move out into the industry. You kind of know what things are just by recognition, right? So I try to follow those same patterns. So users is our resource. It's the thing we're going to create more of, remove some of them, update them. It's the resource that we're working with, okay? You can think of it like your database table. It's a one-to-one. A resource is a database table. That's what we're thinking of, okay? Underneath our resource, we're going to wind up with 7 files in total, actually 8 files in total. We're going to have index. Index, think of it like, well, this might be a new word for some of you, but index, way back in like the 90s and 80s, an index was a catalog of everything to do with a subject, right? So index meant all of that subject. It was all of that thing. And we're kind of following that same scenario. Index is literally all of the users. Every single user we have will be displayed in our index file. That's the idea. Show narrows it down to one user, just one dude. That's it, just one person. New is the visual part of creating a new user. It's the form. It's the actual visual part that you go to in order to create your user. You fill out the form. That happens in new. New will include our form. And the reason why we've separated the form out and not just written it right in the new is because edit is going to use the exact same form. So instead of writing it twice, we'll just populate it in both new and edit, right? So the only thing that will be different really is the titles of those pages. Create works in conjunction with new. New is the visual place where you fill out the information, and then you hit submit. Once you hit submit, the form goes to create. Create is the code that will actually process the form, validate it, sanitize it, take the contents, and write them to the database and create a new user. That's create's purpose. New is what you visually see. Create is the code in the back end that actually writes the user to the database. Okay? We always keep those two pieces separated. Keep your views as their own thing. Keep your processing app, like your processing scripts, separated. So when we add in edit and destroy, we're going to also have an update file. An update file will be the processing piece. When you fill out the form in edit, update will process that and deal with it and then write it to the database or modify it or whatever. Okay? In our index file, we've done this once already. We're going to do it again just so that we can kind of get used to it. Our index file is going to include all of our users. Make sure the index file is users index, right? So it should look like that. It should have a step 8 at the top of it. We're not going to do step 8 yet because that has to do with authentication. We're going to head to step 1. Step 1 is get the users. Include the connect script. Well, the good news is I've already included the configuration script for you. So now we can use it in order to include the connect script. So on line 13, we're going to include once root, because we want to start in the correct C directory path, dot, which is concatenate, slash includes, slash underscore connect.php. And that will include our connect script for us. I'm just going to take this commenting. You're welcome to keep the commenting. I find it's in my way, so I'm going to just remove my commenting underneath it. Now, last week, I believe it was the gentleman in the hat in the back asked me whether prepare was for MySQL, as a MySQL statement, or whether prepare was in PHP. The answer to that question is it's PHP only. The first time that PHP actually communicates with MySQL is in the execute statement. That's the first time it actually communicates. What prepare does, though, prepare takes that statement and it basically says, this is a SQL statement. Anything after you do the prepare is just treated as values you're passing off, and they're not SQL statements. So they won't be parsed as SQL. This helps you avoid something like SQL injection, where somebody actually tries to write SQL in their value that they're passing in their form, and then your script accidentally executes it, right? You can see how that would be a problem. Somebody could literally download the whole database and look through the user files and find, hacks or susceptible entry points into your application. So the way we're going to write this is first we're going to write the string to grab all the users. And you guys should know this statement already. It's select star from users. This is just a string. We've actually not done any code to the MySQL database yet. This is just a string. Next, we're going to prepare this, which is basically going to make the statement that this is the MySQL statement we're going to execute. So we're going to say stmt equals. We're going to use our con variable that's coming from our connection script. Remember, include literally copies and pastes the information that's in the script right where we tell it to. And you'll remember that we have a $conv variable under connect.php. So that's where that's coming from. Prepare $SQL. So that will prepare it and lock it in place. And now that is the only SQL statement that can be executed. If we want to add other dynamic values, we have to bind them, but we don't need to do that right now because our statement is very simple. Next, we're ready to execute it. So we're going to do stmt, execute, and that's just a function call with no arguments. So now what's happened is this has executed the SQL, and it's returned back just an object that we can now basically query the object itself and get what we want from it. So I want to get all of the users, right? So I said select star from users. I want all of the users, and I want them formatted in an array of hashes. That's the way I want it back. What it will look like, don't type this out, just look. What it will look like when it comes back is it will be an array. The array will contain a hash. The hash will contain keys and values like this. The array will contain multiples of those. Like so. There'll be 10 of them altogether because we have 10 users, right? And then when you want to access those from the array, you'll literally just call whatever the variable name is, and you'll access that user. If you wanted to access index 0, you would do 0, first name, whoops, and that would return Sean, obviously. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me go ahead and get rid of that. What we're going to do is we're going to store it in a variable called users. And we're just going to say stmt fetch all. And what that will do is that's a PHP function. It will take all the users that are returned, it'll create the array, and it will create the hashes with all the users in it. The hash keys, the actual keys that we're referencing, they come from the column names in your database. They are one-to-one, right? So if your column name is first name and there's no underscore, then you need to make sure you reference it that way, because that's exactly where they're coming from. Now let's just make sure this is working. Hit enter, and we'll use a command in PHP called var dump, which allows us to see what's in the value of something. So we're going to say users, and we'll save that. And what that will do is literally dump the array that's in here out to our screen for us when we execute it. All right, go ahead and navigate to your browser. Go to users, index. Or users view all users, I think is what the actual thing's called. So you go to users, right here, view all users. And you should see a big array of all of the data. So there should be 10 users altogether. There is 10 if you consider that it starts with 0, right? So you'll see here it's got ID, first name, last name, email, avatar, role, password, created at, and updated at. Created at and updated at, I create for you. They just basically are timestamps that happen the second a user is created. And the one thing to note, these, like I said, are those keys that will be in the hash. So if you wanted to access, say, Donnie, right, you would literally go users, 1, for that index number to access that record, and then first name, and that would access Donnie. All right. However, if you wanted to spit out all 10 users, creating a table and literally writing out 10 times the same information would be, for lack of a better word, asinine, which means redundant, useless, repetitive, whatever you want to say, right? And we want to be, I keep saying lazy programmers, maybe we should use a better word, efficient programmers. We want to be efficient, okay? So to be efficient, let's scroll down a little. We're going to come down here and you're going to see this container. Scroll down a little further and you're going to see the table. Come down a little further, you'll see that in the head, we're looking to spit out the name, the email, and the created on date for the users. And then in T-body, you'll see this message that says, iterate over the users and display their details. So PHP has a very handy repetition structure called a for each. And I think Java has a for each as well. Basically, the purpose of a for each is to give it a list, like an array, and it will iterate over the list and spit out whatever it is into a variable, like a throwaway variable, I call it. The syntax for it, very simple. It's literally the word for each, which we're going to put in a PHP tag, because obviously it won't work if we don't. So it's for each. I'll scroll up a little bit so that you can see. And we end it with a colon, not a semicolon, but a colon. And then its closing tag is end for each. And then we're going to put the code in the middle. We're doing this because it allows us to write PHP and then put HTML in the middle and then write more PHP. The benefits of that is that we don't have to echo out HTML because it looks gross and it gets kind of difficult to maintain. This is much easier to maintain this way. And it's so cool because we just literally open and close PHP tags wherever we need to have a little chunk of PHP. For each takes the array as its first argument. So we're going to say users with a plural S, right? So we're going to give it users. And what it's going to want to do is iterate over those users, take out the item that it's currently working on, and store it. It needs to store it somewhere. So we're going to say users as user. So users is the whole array. User is the current row it's on. Now we can just write HTML. Each user is going to have its own row. So let's create a row tag in HTML, right? And we know we need the name, the email, and the created at date. Well, that's not a problem. So we're going to create a TD tag for each one. There we go. And now we can actually write our HTML, or sorry, our PHP. So I want to put out the user's first name. So all I do is write an inline echo statement. And I'm going to type in $user and then reference the first name key. And that will print out the user's first name. Did I hear rolling? I hear like a rolling sound. Now, just to make life a little easier, what I would recommend doing is actually nesting this value like so. So it's nicely nested. And then we'll add the last name. So the last name is going to wrap to the next line just because I'm going to run out of room here. But that is all one line. And there's a nice little space in here so that you get first name, space, last name. The second one is where we're going to put our user's email. And you probably already beat me to the punch, some of you. But it's the bracket, question mark equals, so an inline PHP echo statement. And it's $user email. There we go. So now you have the first name and the last name. And then last but not least, we'll print out the created at date. The created at date will basically give us the ability to see when this user actually joined our website. And then the last time they were updated, we can also see that if we wanted to. But for now, we'll just look at the created at date. I want to print out the actual date in a specific format, and then I want to print out the time, like the actual timestamp of when they joined. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to create some distance here and put myself in the middle here. And the first statement is going to look like this. I'm going to use the date function that's built into PHP. The first argument the date function takes is the format of the date. So I'm going to say D/M/Y. This configuration, this format, is actually parsed. It's really kind of interesting. What happens is PHP will actually go over this, look at these letters because they mean something, and it will replace these with values. So it will look at D and replace it with the day. It will look at the M and replace it with the month, and it'll look at Y and actually replace it with the 4-digit year. You can get even more sophisticated with this. You can actually print out Tuesday, September 9th, and it will actually print that all out. It's not always intuitive. That's pretty intuitive. Day, month, year, like DMY. That's pretty easy. However, it gets kind of convoluted when you start getting into time. So we're going to do comma. We need to give it a timestamp to format, and it's looking for seconds. So it wants the number of seconds from 1973 to the created at date. Well, good news is there's a function to do that for you. You don't have to calculate that in your head. So it's strtotime, string to time. You give it a string, and it literally calculates out the number of seconds from point A to point B. And that's a function call. And the string we're going to give it is $user created at. That's the string. So once again, that's going to take this date that's a string. It's going to calculate the time from 1973 to that timestamp. I don't know why 1973. That just happens to be the date that it starts from. And then it's going to format those number of seconds into day, month, year for us. Next thing I want the actual time period as well. So I'm just going to duplicate this line. And the way I'm going to duplicate it is by holding Alt and Shift and pressing down, and it will create a duplicate. So once again, that was holding Alt and Shift and pressing down. I'm going to put a break tag in the middle of them. And then I'm going to change the format to be hour, minute, and meridian, which is AM or PM, right? And the way that looks is, G, this doesn't have any relevance to hours. I doesn't really make a lot of sense that it's actually minutes. And A is for meridian. G is hours based on a 12-hour clock, not 24. I is minutes with a zero appended from 0 to 9. And A is meridian, which is AM or PM. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see the whole block that we just coded. And give you a couple seconds to type that out. It's only 9 o'clock, so we should be able to get show done as well. Which is good, because then did you guys already see the little picture that gets generated for the users? Did you see that last week? Okay, good. So you'll see that again today. We might also be able to get the created at form built. We won't be able to do the create part. We won't have time, but we should be able to get the form done so you can actually see the form, right? And I put a nice little handy thing in there for you that will actually generate an avatar and show you an avatar. All right, anybody typing this out still? No, we're good? Let's jump over to our browser. Hit Control R on your keyboard to refresh, and we can see all our users. Yay! But the one thing you're going to notice is this isn't formatted. It doesn't look anything like our current site, right? We don't have the menu. It doesn't have the nice clean styles of Bootstrap. It's kind of chunky looking. We want to change this and make it look a little better. So we obviously need to include something we're missing. We need to include the header. If you jump back to your page, let's scroll up. And you'll see step 3 on line 27 that says include the header.php file. All right, so let's do that. Just put your cursor in that block I already gave you. We're going to type include once root dot slash partials slash underscore, if I could type an underscore header.php. I don't like it when code is in my way. If I'm typing an opening tag and potentially a closing tag, I kind of want to see them within my same code window. And so what I can do is I can actually take advantage of something that my IDE supports called code folding, which is where it will actually collapse code for you. It doesn't delete it. It doesn't disappear. It just visually collapses it so that it gets kind of out of your way. And the way you do that, if you bring your mouse just over to the left side of your editor, you'll see arrows. This is true in Atom and in Visual Code. I don't know about the other IDEs you might be using, but you can click on this little arrow and it will fold up the code. If I click it again, it unfolds it. It's just visual. It doesn't do anything to the actual code itself. It's just something your IDE is giving you. I'm going to fold up my code, and then I'm going to write my include statement for my footer. So include underscore once root dot slash partial slash underscore footer dot php. So now I have my header and I have my footer. My header contains all of my HTML that is at the top of my page, and my footer contains everything from my closing body tag down, including the scripts that I wrote. One thing you can do is just duplicate the include for the header and change the word footer. So it says footer. I'll let everybody finish typing that out. I'll nicely erase all my stuff for people. All right. Anybody still typing? No? All right. Alt-Tab. Alt-Tab allows you to change between applications. It'll do it between the two applications that you're currently working in. Alt-Tab to the browser, Alt-Tab back to the editor. Alt-Tab to the browser. Control-R will refresh your browser. That's handy tips. Control-Shift-R will hard refresh the browser, which means any cached CSS or JavaScript immediately gets refreshed and re-downloaded. If everything is good, you should see these in nice striped tables being provided by Bootstrap. Yeah. Yep, of course. Alt-Tab to get back to the coding. For the what? What do you want to see? This thing? There you go. The end of the for each loop? It's literally just the word end for each. Here, I'll do you even one better. There you go. Now you can see them side by side. While that's folded, actually, you'll notice step 5 says, if not, display a different message. And you'll see this message here The reason why that message is there is because if we have no users in the table, we want to give the current person that's in our system some nice information that basically says, hey, you have no users, you need to create a new user. So we give them like a little notification that basically says, you've got no users, go create a new user, right? But we're going to have to do that with some conditional syntax. And the conditional syntax basically needs to do that check. It needs to count the number of users, make sure that we have none, and if we have none, then it will show that message. All right. Is anybody still typing? No? Okay, so let's do that next. If you scroll up to line 41, you'll see step 4. Check to see if any users exist. Just highlight the comment. We're going to remove the comment. And the way we're going to check the number of users is we're going to count that array, because the number of elements in the array will be the number of users we have. So all we have to do is count it somehow. So I'm not sure how you do it in Java. Do you guys do like array.size or something, or size of? Length? Length, that's the way it is in JavaScript as well. In PHP, it doesn't use .syntax. .syntax is not a thing in PHP. Instead, we use the function called count. And then we pass it the thing we want to count. And you can either give it an array or you can give it a string. If you give it a string, it will count the number of characters in the string. If you give it an array, it will count the number of elements in the array. So we're going to give it users. And what it will return is the number of users that are in that array. It will return the number of elements in the array. So we're going to say, hold on, we're missing some stuff here. We need if count users is greater than 0, colon. So that says if the number of elements in the users array is greater than 0, meaning you have at least one user, right? Then I want to show the table. I'm going to code fold this table so that we can see all of the stuff we're writing here. And I'm also going to code fold the message here. So I've got my if. I now want an else statement. The else statement, super easy to write. All it is else with a colon. Whoops, stop that. Sorry, it just folded everything up. There. It's just else with a colon. What this colon means in PHP is it means I'm not done yet. I've opened this thing up, but I haven't closed it yet. It's still open. This colon helps you because if you don't have the colon there, it doesn't throw an error. You want it to throw an error because you haven't actually closed out your condition. So this colon forces the error to occur. So this last piece here, step 6, and the if. Does anybody want to guess what the word is that we got to write there? Yep, literally end if. As one word. End if. Sounds like an elven character in The Hobbit. End if. This tablet is literally the worst. It dies in no time. So now we have our if condition. We have users. So if we go to our browser and actually look at the table, it's just going to appear. But what you will notice, if I jump over there right now, is anybody still typing? I just don't want to leave if somebody's still typing. Okay, I'll give you a second to finish typing. But if you jump over to your browser and don't refresh and scroll down, you'll see the notification down there. Then if you click refresh and this code is working, that notification should disappear and you should only see the table. That's it. And then I'll show you how to make it so that you can see the notification again. All right, we good? No, not yet? The 3 lines you're writing is this line, this line, and this line, and make sure you've paid attention to these line numbers because they're code folded. What are we at, 911? It's not so bad. All right, we good? I'll copy and paste this into Slack anyways. It's not a big deal. All right, I'm going to refresh the page. First, I'm going to show you. See, I have this no users block at the bottom. I hit Control R, and it's gone because the if condition has found users, so I have a table showing the users. Now, I can prove that this is working. If I come up here, I'm just going to create a new users variable, essentially overriding the one above it. And I'm going to just give it an empty array. It's going to put an empty array in it. So in PHP, once you've defined a variable, you can overwrite the variable. That's totally legal in PHP. So that's what I'm doing. I'm basically taking that variable and setting it as an empty array. Make sure you set it as an empty array, not null, not undefined, not an empty string, because it'll blow up because the count won't work. The for each won't work. All right? Once you've done that, all you need to do is jump back to your browser, hit refresh, and you'll notice we're now replaced with the notification, and there's no table now. So we know our if condition is working fine, right? If you jump back here, we can fix that by just commenting that out by hitting Control/. That'll comment it out. Now our users will be back. Cool. Let's do step 2. Step 2, define the title and active link. Well, the title is that title variable we created before. If you look right now, currently it says Sean McKinnon's portfolio up here, which is not really descriptive of the page. The page is actually users, right? So I want to change that. So I'm just going to create the variable $_title and make it equal to list all users and save it. And then what that will do is when our header kicks in and it sees that title tag, it will go ahead and set the tab title to list all users. That's on line 24. All right, we ready? Everybody good? Yeah? Okay. Jump over to the browser, just hit refresh, and you'll see that the title up at the top has changed to list all users, the one in the tab. We already have the link here. Why don't we go ahead and click that link? See the new users link? Go ahead and give that a click. It's going to take you to register a new user, and you'll notice there's nothing on this page whatsoever. We've got nothing here. The reason there's nothing there, if you jump back to your IDE, I'm going to close these off. We're going to open this side panel. And I'm going to open new. You'll notice that we have our header included. I've done that already for you. We have our config file. It's already included for you. But if we scroll down, you'll see step 1, include the form partial. We haven't included the form that is currently in our file. So what I would like you to do right now, I'm not going to do it for you. I'll do it after you. I'd like you to include the form partial. Use the rest of the page to try to help you solve that problem, but go ahead and include the form partial on line 25. Replace this text with that include, and then I'll come around and look. Actually, why don't we use Slack to our advantage? Once you figure it out, go ahead and copy that line of code and paste it right into Slack for me. Show me what you did to solve it. Okay? So we're replacing this with the form partial. You're going to include the form partial for the users. You're going to wait? Use the file to your advantage. In fact, including that form partial is very similar to another line in this file. In fact, it's similar to two of the lines in the file. Who's Vidhi? You're so close because your path is wrong. So you've got root correct, but this part of your path is wrong. Do you see where the problem is? Yep. So close. Akalesh? Awesome. Akalesh, you're close. The problem there is that you're only including the form. It's not going to know where it's located. It's going to have trouble finding where it's located. It's probably working, though. And the reason why it's working is because you're in the users directory. So it sees it because it's already in that users directory. So it will work. It's better to write an absolute path, though. So begin it with the word root, then dot, then try users/form. Yes, Vidhi, that's correct. That's perfect. Andre, yes, that's correct. Where's Andre? Right there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should be able to tell, but your picture is like this big. That's hard to see. Yep. Woo. Phone's going off the rails here. All right. Yes, that's correct. No. So who's Diwanshu? You're so close. You only have one slight mistake. So root will actually bring back our Comp 1006 lesson 4, right? This little dot that you've added in here, though, that's going to say start in this directory, and you're going to wind up with a syntax error. So get rid of the dot. You were like 99.9% there. Just that dot was the issue. Harmandeep? Yep. Perfect. The whole Comp 1016 group? Yes, that is correct. Perfect. Now you guys are getting it. All right. Let me go ahead and change mine so it looks like yours. So it's include root dot slash users slash underscore form dot php. It was funny. When I first started PHP, I was garbage at it. When I first started PHP, I did things super complex. I kept copying and pasting code in places, and it took me a long time to start to figure out that I needed to be able to create code reuse, right? This thing, I figured that out so I started coding in 2002. I got pretty decent with PHP about 2004, and then it wasn't until 2014 that I learned to do this kind of thing, where you actually take your form, separate it entirely, and treat it as a reusable object. And the thing that taught me that wasn't even PHP. It was Ruby on Rails. Because Ruby on Rails does this by default when it scaffolds the code. It creates a separate file called form and then uses it and injects it into both the new and edit pages. And I was like, that is super smart. That makes so much sense. Because when you think about your edit form and you think about your new form, there's no difference. The only difference between the two forms is that edit will contain all the details already. It will already publish all of the details you need. That's the only difference. Otherwise, the HTML is identical. So you might as well figure out, how do I solve the problem of populating the form? That's really the problem I need to solve. It's not copy and paste the form. It's solve how do I pre-populate it. That's it. So we've got our form in place, and if we navigate to our browser and hit refresh, we'll see the form there. And you can see it's just a normal HTML form, first name, last name, email, password, and password. Let's correct that. That should be password confirmation, not password. That's weird, right? Go ahead and open up your IDE. And obviously, we can't edit in new. We have to open the form. Control P, form, bam. Or open the sidebar if you really want to. I kind of like Control P. Scroll down in your HTML till you get towards the bottom here. There we go. There's password. That's the first one. And there's the password confirmation one. There's the label. Let's correct that label. We'll say password confirmation. That's on line 39. And I'm hoping the answer to this is yes, but it may not be. Did you all create an HTML form in your HTML class? Cool. That's good. Did anybody not create an HTML form or has never seen an HTML form? Awesome. So this form I've created for you because this isn't an HTML class, it's a PHP class. And just going over and over again on how to create a form is not worth it. However, there are some details about a form that I think are important for us to go over. And that is our step one. If you scroll up, we have a step one. Step one, add the action and HTTP method to the form attributes. So, HTML attributes. When we talk about attributes, those are the little things that are inside your HTML tags. So, class is an attribute, for is an attribute, name is an attribute, ID is an attribute. Those are attributes. Forms require, at the bare minimum, they require actually no attributes. If you were to post this, if you were to hit submit, it will use the get method to do it, which means all of your form values will get shoved into the URL, and it will navigate to the same page you're on and hit that page for you to actually go through all those values. That's what it does by default. With no values, if you hit submit, it will just return back to the page you're on with all of your form values. You want to see it? Click your browser, click submit. See how we have this question mark here now? Go ahead and populate some stuff in here. I'm just gonna, nope, don't do things like that. Not settings. There you go. Enter an email address. Create a password. Now click submit. All of that data should have gone up into the address bar, but for some reason it's not including up there. It's likely inside of our, it would likely be inside of our network tab. Let's try that again. Even just two fields here. There it is. So there's new.php. Here's our request headers. Where's our values? Oh, maybe you actually do now have to do, oh, that's changed. You may have to actually include your HTTP method to get the values to appear. But by default, you can see it's actually posting back to the same page it's on. To change that, we need to add two attributes. We need to add the action, which is the path to where we want to actually post to. And we need to add the method, which is how we want to actually submit our form. The common way, the most common convention is to use post whenever you're dealing with creating, updating, or deleting information. Any type of mutation, you should use the HTML method, or the HTTP method, sorry, post. The action will point to our create script that we have built. We haven't actually coded it out, but that's where it's going to point to. So what we can do here, first we're going to use the absolute URL of root. Whoops. And we're going to point to create.php. Sorry, that's under the users. Users, create.php. So our action is going to point to our create script, and our method is going to submit our form details via post. When you guys built the form in HTML, did you guys use the method post? Yeah. What did you do? What did you use to process the form? It just posted, and that was it? Okay. I've always kind of wondered, like, if you're teaching forms in HTML, what are you using to process? Because there are things they could have used. There's actually, there's companies where you can actually just post form information off to, and they'll handle your post details and write them to a database for you. You don't have to know any server side. But that's it. Did they take you into the network tab and show you what was actually getting submitted? Inside the URL? Right. Post is the most common most common method you will use whenever you're working with creating or updating. When it comes to deleting, it's a little trickier. Some people believe that deleting doesn't require a post action. They're just like, you know what? The simplest way to do it is not to create a stupid form. I'm just going to create a link and send off my information to the back end, and it will destroy whatever it is. Other people, like myself, believe that create, update, and destroy requires something different than what get does. Get is only for reading. So because get is only for reading, destroying something shouldn't be done using a get request. It should be done with a post request, which means in this class, we will create a form that actually does destroy for you. It'll just be super basic. All right. So step one, we created our form action. We gave it the link to our create.php. We have a method called post. We will actually post off to create.php, and we'll spit out our form details. Step two, add the name attribute to the input element. Well, that is super, super important. Right now, we have an ID, but in order for us to access the details of this input element in our script, in our create script, we need to give it a name. So what I like to do is I just keep my names to the same names as the columns that are in the MySQL table. Makes it nice and easy. You can literally call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You're not restricted to calling it that. I just do that because it makes the most amount of sense. I call my IDs by those columns, and I call my names by those columns. Like so. So that's the attribute for my first name. First name. Like I said before, I am super, super, super lazy, and I don't want to type this out for all the other columns. So what I'm going to do, just wait for everybody to get that one written. All right, I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to double click on last name under the ID. Okay. I'm going to scroll down a little further, and I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to double click on email. So now email and last name are both selected. And I'm always doing this in the ID. I'm going to scroll down a little further, hold Alt, and double click on password. And then a little further, hold Alt, and double click on password confirmation. So now I have password confirmation selected, password selected, email selected, and last name selected. Now I'm going to confidently hope that this is all working. And I'm going to first hit Control C. And that's going to copy all four of those values into my clipboard. Okay, so I've hit Control C. Next, using my cursor, I'm going to put my cursor to the end here, hit space, type in name equals, and a set of quotes. And then I'm going to hit Control V. Notice last name was posted there. Notice email was posted there. Notice password was posted there. And notice password confirmation was posted there. You filled out 4 fields in 30 seconds. All right, just to make sure everybody's caught up, I'm going to Control-A, Control-C, copy this, jump over to Slack, create a new code snippet. This will be users_form.php. I'll paste that in place. Feel free to copy and paste that. So now I have all of the names titled for all of my form values. I'm going to jump over to my browser. I'm going to hit refresh, super important. And I want to make sure that I actually have the name attributes attached. This is a super handy tool for you. Right-click on any field that it is that you want to look at and choose Inspect. What will happen is the Inspect window will open up. It will immediately drop you on the element you right-clicked on and highlight it for you. So I can see here that, yes, I have the name attribute and its value is first name. That makes it super handy. If I want to do it again, I can right-click on this one, choose Inspect. Boom, it drops to that one. If I want to make it even easier on myself, there's this little handy utility up here that looks like a square with an arrow in it. You can click on it, and then you just click on the things. Cool, that's what that one looks like. That's this one here. Didn't open up for some bizarre reason. Open up. I think that might be actually being affected by my 1Password that's causing that issue. Yeah, that's exactly what's causing the issue. Okay, so that makes that nice and easy. If we fill out this form, go ahead and fill it out with your information, right? Notice when I type in my email address, it immediately populates a little avatar for me. If I change my email address by even 1 character, my avatar changes. So all of you will have your own unique little avatar when you type it in. I'll show you what magic is doing that in a minute. That avatar is almost offensive at this point. Go ahead and type in a password. I'm just using test. And then when you're done, click submit. What you're going to notice right off the bat is submit is not doing anything at all. Not going anywhere. It's not navigating. It might be because we have this question mark at the top, and that could be causing the issue. Let me fix that. We'll try this again. Yeah, that's super weird. It's not making a request. Did I put in the action properly? I have the action. Should post. I wonder what's blocking my post. Oh yeah, this form is busted. Something completely broke my form. Oh. Not allowed to load local resource. Oh, that's the reason why. So it's because we can't actually access create.php. And the reason is because root is the wrong thing. Root is actually accessing our C directory and trying to literally load the file right into that spot. We don't want root. We want basepass. Now it will post. So change your action from root to basepass. And then once you have that, go back to your form and refresh your page. So I'm going to refresh the page, fill out my form. ASDF, ASDF, submit, and it's blank. There's no response. Is yours not blank? Is it something else other than blank? Not found. Not found's not good. We'll deal with that in a minute. We only have one more thing we're actually going to do right now. I don't want a blank page. I want to actually show something. So if you go to your IDE, open up your create.php script. And we're going to do one very simple thing. Just under the create message system there, I'm just going to var dump what we had sent to us. So var dump. And the thing I'm going to var dump is a super global that PHP creates that we're going to discuss next week. We're actually going to discuss all about all of the super globals. But this one super global that's super important is called $_post. If you send your form with get, you use $_get. If you send your form with post, you use $_post. What those are is they're magic, and I mean magic super global variables that PHP creates. And when you submit a form, it takes all the contents of the form, it parses through them, it creates a hash, it makes the keys the name field of your form, right? And it makes the values the value that you put inside each of those fields, right? So if you called the name for first name, for example, F name instead of first name, the key you would be looking for inside this object would be F name, right? We're just going to dump it out so that you can see what's inside of it. Go back to your browser, you're going to hit refresh, and it's going to come up with this very weird message. It's going to say confirm form resubmission. Basically what that means is the browser is attempting to resubmit your form. It is possible you're being hacked. Are you sure you want to do this? And you as the user, knowing that you're the one doing the hacking to yourself, can say confirm. And what it will spit out is what that array looks like. So you can see there's our keys, right? Those are the name fields that we put inside our form, all three of them. You can see the values of the first name, the last name, and the email address. And then you can also see your password. So it doesn't matter that your password was showing up as little dots, because when it gets submitted to the form, to the actual create script, it comes in as raw text. All right. Next week, we're actually going to build this create script. We're going to learn about super globals. Super globals are the $_post. That's a super global. We're going to learn about the post one. We're going to learn about get. We're going to learn about the super, super important super global session, like the most important variable you're going to learn about. We're going to talk about the cookie one as well. So 4 different super globals. We're going to build out our authentication script. So this will create a user, and hopefully we'll get to a spot where we can actually create a login page, log in, and be logged in. That's our goal for next week. If we don't get there, totally fine. Don't stress out. I'm going to stick around till 10 o'clock. That's all I have for you today. I will help anybody with errors. I'll meet you up here. One